His parents are retired public school teachers, and his first experience with politics was supporting them on the picket lines during the Harris years. He went on to obtain his BA and JD from Queen's and his Master of Laws from Oxford, where he studied constitutional law. He also pitched for baseball teams at both universities. Nate practiced commercial litigation before pursuing politics. Nate's wife, Amy, is a chef and nutrition professor, currently completing her PhD at the University of Toronto. She also works with HSI's Forward Food Program and as the director of the Supper Club program at Gilda's Club, Greater Toronto. Originally from Lambton County, her dad still lives on the family farm. May I have a big round of applause for Nate?
When an introduction starts with he went to public school, I never know exactly where it's going and how much they're going to say about me. So thank you for the warm words. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Nate Erskine Smith. I am a Liberal Member of Parliament. I've been a Member of Parliament since 2015, and I'm now running for the Ontario Liberal Party leadership. And why am I speaking to you at VegFest? Well, I spoke last year, and my wife spoke as well. My wife is not only a chef, she's a plant-based chef, and she makes an incredible difference for animals in many ways by training other chefs how to incorporate plant-based eating and healthier eating in their menus. Yeah, Amy wishes she could be here today, actually. She's, my soon-to-be 7-year-old and 3-year-old are causing her trouble at home. And I'm here, I was raised vegetarian. My wife and I, Amy and I, are both plant-based now. We're raising our kids plant-based as well. But I'm here because I want to talk to you about animals in politics and how politics can and should be a forum for making a really big difference in the lives of those around us, including the lives of animals. And when I was first elected in 2015, I introduced a piece of legislation, and it was I called it an ambitious piece of legislation at the time, but it was really a basket of modest measures. It had even been endorsed at one point by the Canadian Federation of Agriculture, but it was to strengthen animal cruelty offenses in the criminal code, it was to prohibit shark finning, and it was to strengthen labeling around fur. All sensible things, all things that exist in other jurisdictions for the most part, and yet it was an incredible challenge to get that bill passed. And there was a real feeling in some quarters, conservative quarters in particular, but I couldn't even get the Liberal government of the day, I'm a Liberal, I couldn't even get the Liberal government to support it because they felt the thin edge of the wedge. If this, what next? And it was to the point that, and Amy's from small town southwestern Ontario and grew up on a farm. The farm's been in the family since 1834, and speaking to farmers in Lambton County and friends of my father-in-law, I was like, what am I missing? This is, a dog was killed with a baseball bat in the early 90s, and the dog died immediately, and there was no pain and suffering, and so therefore the person was acquitted. And so this would have updated the law to make it a crime to brutally and viciously kill an animal, regardless of whether the animal dies immediately. And I had conservatives getting up in the House of Commons and saying, oh, if someone bops a fish on the head in their boat, they're going to be threatened with criminal fines. And obviously that's not true. And yet, when I speak to people on the ground, actual people who are, in this case, involved in chicken farming, he said, well, why would anyone want to brutally and viciously kill an animal? And I think there's a huge opportunity in our politics to build bridges and to make sure that we really focus on strengthening the humane treatment of animals with, it's all based on animal science. Animals think, love, and feel. They deserve to be treated with respect and with compassion. And there are areas where we can make huge differences in food policy, and then there are other areas around agricultural policy that is about building bridges and building respectful relationships to recognize the livelihoods at stake, but to make sure that we are at all times strengthening animal welfare where we can. Now, I struggled with that bill. I haven't always struggled with legislation. We have seen prohibitions on shark finning come to pass. We see legislation to prohibit the captivity of whales and dolphins that has come to pass. We've got legislation now before us to ban cosmetic testing. There's a bill that looks to, it is good news. We've got legislation and hopefully government funding support to come around phasing out toxicity testing more broadly with a target of 2035. So there are many different ways we can use the legislature to make a difference. Part of this, though, is about changing minds first. you really have to change minds before you're able to change laws. And so part of the work that you're doing, that the VegFest is doing, part of the event today and so many events like it, they're about changing minds. And that is ultimately how you can make a much bigger difference in the end in terms of changing laws. The other thing though, and I've seen success in terms of building coalitions and building relationships in my own caucus. We have an animal welfare caucus. That animal welfare caucus was started out of the wake of sort of the defeat of that bill that I mentioned at the outset. But it's made a huge difference in many ways. That in the last election, for the first time in history actually, we had a liberal party, a conservative party to a smaller degree, but we had parties, mainstream parties, making commitments on animal welfare for the very, very first time. And it was a consequence of having a liberal animal welfare caucus. We also have an all-party caucus, but it was a consequence of the liberal animal welfare caucus and building relationships in my caucus, and we ended up seeing major commitments, some of which we've yet to see through. So on the live export of horses for slaughter, an issue that we promised to prohibit, government hasn't taken sufficient action yet. But on other areas, we've seen serious action, and it is really through those relationships, my building relationships in my own caucus. I will say though, and I'll extend this to you, it is about constituents and voters building relationships with their representatives. You all care about more things than just animals. I've been vocal on climate change, on reducing poverty, on saving lives in the opioid crisis, on pediatric cancer research, supporting urban indigenous communities, privacy protections online. You can care about many things at once, but on things that you are most passionate about, if you go and you meet with your member of parliament or member of provincial parliament and you build a relationship with them to say, these are the issues that I care about, this is what I do in my community, I can tell you, if you go back 6 months later or 12 months later and you check in and say, remember, we spoke about this, I want to update you on this issue or a related issue, and this is what I do in the community. Show up at events where there are public events that they're hosting. That can all make it, I don't want to propose it makes a difference for absolutely every representative, but it can make a huge difference in terms of building those relationships and getting things done. And then when there is an issue before Parliament, to again, ask for that meeting and to say, this is an issue that is before you, you're going to vote on it, this is why it's important that you vote in this particular way, and why I am so passionate about that. And that, there's conversations on Twitter that can happen, I think not so successfully. There are conversations and real conversations and relationships that can be built in an office that can be really impactful, especially if many constituents are all doing it. The other way to make a difference, and for me, I left law for politics 10 years ago with one core challenge in mind: how do I make the biggest difference? And 10 years ago, the federal Liberal Party was in third place and in need of generational renewal, and we had a really frustrating conservative majority government. And for me at that time, that was where I could make the biggest difference. Now, when I think about where I can make the biggest difference today, you have a Liberal Party provincially that is in third place, in desperate need of that same generational renewal, and we have a really frustrating conservative majority government at Queen's Park. And we can talk about environmental protections in the Greenbelt, or we can talk about the fact that they have reversed some basic protections on, you can now in closed pens have animals, dogs, hunt in closed pens, and it is a measure that was prohibited for many years, and they have brought it back. I have spoken to conservatives who are outraged by this, and so this isn't a matter of across-the-board partisanship. We have an opportunity to build relationships, and I don't think animal welfare is a partisan issue. There are liberals who care about animal welfare, there are conservatives who care about it, there are Green Party members who care about it, NDP members. There are people who do not vote, and they don't vote because they don't see politicians making a difference on the issues that they care about, and they care about animal welfare. Now, we have an opportunity at the provincial level right now to really shape the Ontario Liberal Party, to make sure there are certain issues on the agenda in the Liberal Party in a more serious way. And I'm not going to come before you and say that there's any plan to end animal agriculture in the province of Ontario, because I don't think that would be a credible or fair thing to say, and I don't want to be a dishonest politician. I do think, though, we can make major inroads by building coalitions. In federal politics, I have a bill before Parliament called the Pandemic Prevention and Preparedness Act, and it speaks to a One Health approach. Why? What is a One Health approach? It draws on the interconnection between health, animal welfare, human health, animal welfare, and the environment. These are all connected ideas. And if we look at it provincially and we say, people care about climate action, people care about animal welfare, and people care about human health, what are the conversations we can have at the provincial level? And I can guarantee you that when we have, and this is a good news federally, we have a largely plant-based food guide that is based on the best science for our health. Where at the provincial level, if I say I want a healthy school food policy, and I want a healthy school food policy in no matter what public school, I want people to know that they're going to be able to eat good food. I want to make sure kids are coming to school and know that they're going to have food to eat so they can focus on their studies. Well, that food should be delivered based on that evidence-based, science-based, and as it happens, plant-based food guide. The same when you look at our healthcare system. Are we delivering healthy and quality food in our hospitals and our long-term care? The answer is no, and we should. And the second order consequence of that is that we'd be saving a lot of animals at the same time, because if it's based on the food guide, it is in the best interest of our health, it's in the best interest of our planet, it's also in the best interest of animals as it happens. And these are interconnected ideas. So I don't want to come and say, I'm going to solve all of the problems for animals all at once if I'm the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party. I do want to tell you that I'm going to take it seriously, that we're going to deliver some issues right away, and I've been in conversations with advocates like Humane Canada, the sort of, the umbrella group of humane societies across this country, and there are certain issues on supporting enforcement efforts, there are certain issues around prohibiting puppy mills that can be done right away, and I think we can build an easy coalition to get that done, because this is about coalition building and building support. There are other issues, changing the delivery of food in our healthcare system, our education system, that we can do, because I know there's a coalition out there that wants to deliver nutritious, healthy food for our kids and for our loved ones and patients in the healthcare system. And so, as I say, I don't promise to solve all problems, but we are going to take this seriously, and we are, if I am Premier, you are going to have a Premier who cares about animals in a serious way. And I want to leave you with this, because not everyone joins political parties, and I know why, because people don't see the integrity and honesty in politics that they sometimes want to see, and they don't feel like politics is making the difference that they want to make. I can tell you, politics has faults, many faults at times. Politics is also the most important way we make a difference in the lives of those around us. Everything we care about, whether it is around housing, whether it is around climate action, whether it is around reconciliation, whether it is around animals, politics touches everything. And if you want better from politics, I want better from politics. If you want better, the answer is participation. And there's an opportunity right now. The Liberal Party only has 9 seats at Queen's Park. We get to decide in a leadership race. We get to decide what kind of party we want, but we get to decide, more importantly, what kind of politics we want in the province of Ontario. And so my ask of you is, if you want a Premier who cares about animals, consider joining the Ontario Liberal Party to vote in this leadership race. It is free. Anyone 14 years old can vote. It's different than a general election. Any resident of Ontario, you don't have to be a citizen to vote in this. The only rule that applies here, the vote's going to be at the end of November. We can talk about that later. The deadline to register in order to be eligible to vote is September 11th. So we have a booth over there. Make sure you come by. If you have tough questions for me, come and ask me tough questions. You can also come by and ask me easy questions if you like. But more importantly, come and register for the party so you have a voice in who the next leader for the Ontario Liberal Party will be. I hope it's me. And you have a voice in who the next Premier is going to be. And thanks so much for having me here at the VegFest. And thank you to every single volunteer for making this event happen. It is amazing to come here and see it grow for the second year. Thank you so much.